Hi, this is Mike Hendrickson from Software Architecture in London. I'm here with Allard from AxonIQ. Allard, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
So can you unpack a little bit about what you guys do? I'm not totally aware of everything you guys do, so can you let everyone know what you do?
Yeah, so AxonIQ is a company that was actually founded only 3 months ago, and we are the backing company of a framework called Axon Framework, which has been around for quite a lot longer by now, about 7 years. I think the first draft started to emerge about seven years ago, and essentially as a company we provide the support that people need to implement the Axon Framework in a correct way.
And what does the framework do?
So the framework, so let me tell you how it started. It's a bit of a weird story. So I was a software architect at the time, and working on different projects. And I noticed that every project became very complex. The complexity of the software would grow exponentially as you would add features, which is not a desired side effect of software. So I started investigating how does what's causing this, right? What's the underlying problem? And I was into domain-driven design a lot at the time, still am. So I started experimenting, and I learned about this concept called CQS. And I started an experiment on, and I published that code on GitHub. That was very normal procedure for us to do experiments. So I was experimenting, and I noticed that I was writing a lot of code just to solve a technical problem, but not so much business problems. So I figured everybody would have to write code like that if they were to solve any business problem the way I approached it. And then a couple of months later I got a call from a French company, and they said they were using my framework in production, but I wasn't calling it a framework just yet. It was just an experiment for me. So that sort of scared me, and I asked them, okay, but what are you using it for? They said, well, it's a medical application. We're using the framework to trace the cleaning process of surgical tools in the tools used in surgery. So as far as I know, no lives were harmed in the process of building the framework. So essentially the goal of the framework is to be able to cope with growing complexity that we have in our applications by creating not just a single domain model that tries to capture all that you're doing and building a huge monolith on top of that, but separating that big model into different smaller models that are really focused on a specific problem. And a specific concept that we use is called CQS, which says create a model that is focused on dealing with commands, so with the state changes of your application, by validating them, and make sure that model is really good at doing that and optimize it for the non-functional requirements that you have. It may be performance, it may be simple latency, or maybe complexity. And on the other side, there's the models that serve information for the queries, which are optimized to give answers in a fast way, or at least in an efficient way, depending on, again, the non-functional needs that you have there. So by separating them, you can tackle the complexity in different areas, making more modules but keeping them less complex.
So is this a tool for software architects?
It's so the framework is a tool for mainly developers, but we do see that architects start off with the architectural patterns that the tool supports. So the decision is often made by architects to start using the concept that the framework supports, and then it's either, if it's a coding architect, which is the case in most situations, he will probably find the framework as being a way to ease into that specific architectural style.
So what is the biggest benefit of, let's say, a architect and then a developer using a tool like this? Just reducing complexity, or is there more than?
Well, there is more. So one thing is reducing complexity by creating these different models, and another benefit is CQS makes it easier to apply event sourcing. And event sourcing is where you, when there's a state change, you emit an event to notify other components that something has happened, right? An order has been sold, or an inventory item has been depleted. Yes. Yep. So anything that's important, and these are business level events, right? They're not technical things. And that component will need to know the current state of the inventory, for example, but it's also emitting those events. And you can store those events, and then you have a nice sort of audit trail of what is happening to your applications by storing them. And event sourcing is the process where you don't store the current state anymore separately, but you only use that trail of events as your source of truth, which makes that audit trail very reliable, because you're guaranteed that if there is a mistake in your state, that mistake is reflected in your state. So there's nothing that can happen without leaving a trace.
So is this going to be ideal for continuous delivery environments as well?
There are some challenges in continuous delivery, exactly, because state changes happen all of the time, and you're storing that information pretty much indefinitely. So when you're deploying new versions, there's always this backwards but also forwards compatibility that you have to take into account. That is a challenge, and that's one of the challenges that Axon will help developers to tackle. So it's definitely, it will still be a challenge, and it's still there, but we're trying to make the developer life easier.
Yeah, because challenge and complexity are a very similar thing. It's like, you know, complexity can challenge an organization and a framework and a software delivery, but also the challenge in keeping that going will be something important for everyone. So if you were to fast forward 6 to 8 months from now, what would you like to say you guys are doing better than anyone else?
Yeah, so right now we've got the Axon framework, and the adoption of the Axon framework is growing quite rapidly. But now we're seeing problems at our customers, or challenges at our customers, where they start using the Axon framework at larger scale. So those events are being published on a much larger scale than just in a single application. So one of our customers has over 800 nodes communicating using events in different parts of their organizations, and they have difficulties efficiently routing those events to the different components that are interested. And there's not only events, there's also the commands and the queries that are moving around. So right now, as AxonIQ, we are focusing on, let's say, the area in between those applications that are being deployed, and providing a messaging platform, if I may call it that way, to optimize the routing of messages between these components.
Messaging orchestration.
Message orchestration.
Yeah.
So maybe ESB sort of pops up, and it's like, oh no, not that again.
Yeah.
We've learned our lessons from that era, but it seems that we are moving to the exact opposite of ESB right now, which is dumb pipes and just the message brokering, just sending out a message and publishing to any component. But we see some problems with that as well. It's a bit oversimplified. We believe that there's a middle ground, somewhat closer to the dumb pipes than to ESB, but there's a middle ground where a messaging platform doesn't know about the meaning of the contents of a message, but it does know the stereotype of a message. So it does know whether it's an event or a command or a query, because the routing patterns that we see for those messages, they are slightly different.
So you guys provide the support. AxonIQ provides the support for the Axon framework. What is the biggest need that you're hearing from people when they're trying to deploy and implement the framework?
Yeah, so the framework uses some paradigms that are new to most, and we noticed that well, because they're new, they want to know whether they do it right, because there's not many places where you can go and ask fellow developers, like, hey, what's your experience in building a large-scale CQS-based event-sourced application? There's not that many people that will give you an answer. So they like to come to us to help them do it right. And that's also because of event sourcing. You're storing your history, and you have to live with that history forever. You're dragging it with you. So doing it right, well, the first time is slightly more important than it used to be. You're still allowed to make mistakes, and there's ways to fix them. But since it's so new, people just want to have confirmation that whatever design they've made is correct for them. So it's, and also because it's new, people try to, well, they don't try, they just forget everything they know. And so, oh, this is a new world now, so all the old rules that we had, they don't apply anymore, and now we have to learn everything again. Well, that's not true either. We still have good rules. There's a lot of lessons that we've learned and a lot of practices that we have that are still very much valid, even though we change a bit of the architectural style in which we implement them.
So, Allard, if you and I sit down 12 months from now here in London next year and have the same conversation, what will be different for AxonIQ?
So AxonIQ will have changed from a company that primarily provides support on the framework to a company that provides a messaging product that allows companies to essentially scale applications out dynamically without having to care much about how to implement these messaging patterns in between these applications. So we are evolving more towards a product company. We're developing that software right now as we speak in our office, but yeah, our means of survival at the moment is support.
Excellent. Allard, we look forward to that conversation. Thank you.
All right, see you next year.